is that strong weight is placed in many jurisdictions anyway. I don't know actually if this is true in India, but in many jurisdictions, strong weight is placed on evidence of likely harm. And that tends to be economic evidence of likely harm. The trouble is that economics as an academic discipline is incredibly useful, but it's not actually well suited to providing evidence that is at the level of confidence that courts tend to require. They tend to require, can I be really sure that this is true? Economics doesn't usually give you that. It's kind of it gives you an estimate and kind of error bands. And so it's very useful for enabling policy judgments and kind of more likely than not judgments. Is actually not that good. And actually what that tends to do is you end up with courts seeing economists arguing about what you can tell from the economics. And they end up saying, look, I don't understand. I don't know what I can do. I don't know. I can't rely on all of this. And therefore the cases don't succeed. And therefore you get under intervention. So as a result of that, the EU in designing the Digital Markets Act had effectively, in my view, has sought to avoid economics so far as it can. So it has taken away market definition, which is one area where economics tends to play a role. In order to designate firms, you don't have to show that they have market power, you just have to show that they meet certain quantitative thresholds. And they also have made it so you don't need to show harm. Essentially, there's just a set of rules in the legislation, and if you disobey them, you are breaching the law. There is no need to show that there's any harm associated with that breach. So it takes the economics out. So this has led to a debate about, well, does it take it completely out? Or is there some areas where economics will still play a role? And I have a paper which people can go and read if they want. It's with other authors, which talks about, first of all, what I've just described, why economics has been taken out, and actually kind of says it should have been. I mean, it's not a silly thing that it's been taken out, but then talks about, nonetheless, the role it can usefully play. And so, for example, one role it could usefully play is in terms of self-preferencing in ranking. So I talked earlier about Amazon putting its own service in the buy box. That's a form of ranking. It's self-preferencing in ranking. But sometimes that will be right. If Amazon has the best product, it's perfectly good to put it in the buy box. That's not self-preferencing. That's just giving an organic, fair result. But how can you distinguish self-preferencing from giving yourself the best ranking, but on objective grounds? And I think economics is going to be quite useful for distinguishing between those two situations. And in our paper, we have a whole set of other areas where we think just economics is going to be needed, even though the things look very clear legalistically in the legislation. When you think about them harder, they are going to need economics. One area where we think that we're definitely going to need more economics is around behavioral economics. And interestingly, I think the Digital Markets Act is possibly the most well-informed legislation that I've ever seen from a behavioral economics perspective. It absolutely recognizes that platforms can steer end user behavior through the use of defaults, through rankings, through complexity, and that steering can have positive effects, but can also have anti-competitive effects. And it tries to draw the line between the positive and the anti-competitive, I think, pretty neatly. It does it through specific rules, for example, around default settings, but also through a more general requirement around effectiveness. So when the firms are trying to show that they are compliant, they have to do so not only saying that they're abiding by the rules as set out in the legislation, but that they are abiding by those rules in a way that is effective in promoting contestability and fairness, which are the objectives of the regulation. So I think that's really, it's very neat because it stops firms from just kind of doing the minimum, and all really requires them to think about actually what is the impact of what we're doing on consumers, and are they really, is it really enabling them to make the decisions that they should be making, or are we steering them unduly?